Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I hope you are sitting comfortably because today we're going to take a journey that is, well, it's equal parts fascinating and, frankly, a little bit haunting.
Yeah, this one gets under your skin a little bit.
It really does. You know, we usually talk about innovation on this show as this shiny, linear path to glory, right? You have a problem, you have that light bulb moment, you build the thing, and, the world applauds.
That is the story we like to tell ourselves. It's the hero's journey of the engineer, of the inventor.
Exactly. But today, we're looking at the shadow side of that story. We're looking at Frankenstein's remorse. We're talking about that specific gut-wrenching moment when a creator looks at their masterpiece, the thing that was supposed to save the world or revolutionize an industry, and they realize they have just made a terrible, terrible mistake.
It's a very human theme. It's the ultimate expression of the law of unintended consequences.
Law of unintended consequences. Yeah.
We often think that if the intention is good, the outcome will be good. But history is just littered with examples where genius failed to predict human nature or capitalist incentives, or just the sheer destructive scale of how a tool would end up being applied.
And the research stack you brought today is absolutely massive. I mean, we aren't just looking at one sector here. We are covering the whole spectrum of regret.
We really are.
We have the lethal stuff, explosives, machine guns, atomic weapons.
Right, the heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters. Then we have the stuff that just makes modern life undeniably annoying, like the office cubicle and the pop-up ad.
Things that just grind you down, yeah.
And then, and this is maybe the most important part, we have the existential stuff, the alarms currently being sounded by the architects of social media and artificial intelligence.
And that's where it gets really current and really scary.
So our mission today is to figure out why this keeps happening. Is there a pattern here? Is it hubris? Is it a failure of imagination? And what does it tell us about the responsibility of innovation going forward?
It is a heavy question, but I think if you look at the history, the clues are all there. They really are.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I want to start with a story that feels like the absolute archetype of this phenomenon. It's about a man whose name is literally synonymous with peace today,
Right.
but who spent the bulk of his life as a merchant of explosives, Alfred Nobel.
It is one of history's great ironies. It truly is. Most people know the Nobel Peace Prize.
Of course.
But fewer people stop to ask, where did the money for that prize actually come from?
Right, we think of him as a philanthropist.
Yeah.
But in the 1860s, Alfred Nobel was a chemist and an engineer, and he was working in a very, very dangerous family business.
He was. And you have to understand the context of the mid-19th century. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing.
Right.
The world is trying to build railways, dig mines, tunnel through mountains. It's this time of massive infrastructure projects. And to do any of that, you need to be able to break rock.
Okay.
A lot of rock.
And what were they using at the time? I'm picturing like pickaxes and old-timey black powder.
Mostly black powder, which was, it was weak, it was inefficient, or they were starting to experiment with nitroglycerin.
Okay, nitroglycerin.
Now, nitroglycerin is powerful. I mean, way more powerful than gunpowder, but it is incredibly temperamental. It's a liquid. If you shake it too hard, it explodes. If the temperature changes too fast, it can explode. It was a complete nightmare to transport and handle.
And this wasn't just some theoretical danger for Nobel. It wasn't an abstract problem. This hit home for him in the worst possible way.
It did. In 1864, there was a massive explosion at the Nobel family factory in Stockholm. It was catastrophic. It killed 5 people.
Wow.
And one of them was Alfred's younger brother, Emil. He was only 21 years old.
Oh, that's horrific. So when we look at Nobel's motivation here, he isn't sitting in a lab somewhere, twirling his mustache trying to build a weapon to kill people.
Not at all.
He's trying to solve a safety problem.
Yeah.
He's trying to stop people like his own brother from dying.
Precisely. That is the key to this whole story.
Yeah.
His intent was industrial safety. He wanted to tame nitroglycerin. He became obsessed with it. He spent years experimenting, trying to find a way to stabilize it.
And eventually he did.
Eventually, in 1867, he cracked it. He figured out that if you mix the liquid nitroglycerin with a very specific type of silica or absorbent clay, it's called kieselguhr, it turns into a paste.
Ah, and a paste is stable. A paste can be shaped.
Exactly. You can shape it into rods. It's stable. You can drop it. You can transport it on a bumpy wagon, and it won't go off unless you use a blasting cap to detonate it. He called it dynamite from the Greek word dynamis, which means power.
And I imagine initially this must have been seen as a complete miracle.
It was. It absolutely revolutionized construction. The Panama Canal, the transcontinental railroads in the U.S., the tunnels through the Alps, none of that would have been finished as quickly or as safely, quote unquote, without dynamite.
But, as with all high-energy inventions, you can't make something that explodes that well without the military getting very, very interested.
And they did, very quickly. Dynamite became a tool of war. Cannons, mines, sabotage, you name it. But here's the fascinating part. For a while, Nobel didn't really seem to have a crisis of conscience about that.
Oh, really?
He was a pragmatist, a businessman. He was selling a product. The regret, the change of heart, it didn't come from the invention itself. It came from a newspaper.
The premature obituary. This is such a cinematic moment. It's one of those things that if you saw it in a movie, you'd say, oh, that's too convenient. But it actually happened.
It's a complete fluke that changed history. In 1888, Alfred's other brother, Ludwig, died in France. But the French press got confused. They thought Alfred Nobel, the famous inventor of dynamite, had died. So they went ahead and printed his obituary while he was still very much alive.
Imagine that. Just imagine waking up, you're pouring your morning coffee, you open the paper, and you're reading a summary of your life in past tense.
It's surreal.
That is surreal enough. But the content of the obituary was the real kicker, wasn't it?
It was absolutely brutal. The headline was Le Marchand de la Mort est mort, which translates to The Merchant of Death is dead.
Oof. The Merchant of Death. That is not what you want on your tombstone.
No, and the text was even harsher. It said that Dr. Alfred Nobel became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before.
That must have been a punch to the gut. I mean, here's a guy who sees himself as the man who helped build the modern world, the guy who made mining safer.
Right.
But the world sees him as a monster who facilitated mass slaughter.
It shook him to his absolute core. He suddenly realized that this was his legacy. If he died right then, that was the story the world would tell about him. And Nobel was a man who cared deeply about his reputation. He was literate. He wrote poetry. He considered himself a man of culture and science. Being remembered as a war profiteer was just unacceptable to him.
So the Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize especially, that was basically a massive PR pivot, a course correction for his entire legacy.
In a way, yes. You could call it a bid for redemption. He sat down and he rewrote his will. He took the vast majority of his fortune, which, let's be honest, came largely from explosives and armaments, and he put it into a trust.
Right.
And he mandated that the interest on that money should be distributed annually as prizes to those who conferred the greatest benefit on mankind.
Physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, and of course, peace.
Exactly. He wanted his name to be associated with the benefit of mankind, not its destruction. It's the ultimate I'm sorry gift to the world, funded by the very thing he was sorry for.
And it worked. I mean, it completely worked. When we say Nobel today, we think of brilliance. We think of peace. We think of the highest honor a human can achieve.
Yes.
We don't think of the brother killed in the factory or the soldiers blown apart in the trenches. He successfully rewrote his own story after he died.
He did.
Yeah.
And it sets up this pattern we're going to see over and over and over today. The inventor solves a specific practical problem, in this case, stabilizing explosives, but the application scales into violence that they can't control and never intended.
And sometimes, the inventor actually deludes themselves into thinking the weapon will bring peace. Which brings us to Richard Jordan Gatling.
The Gatling gun, the first effective machine gun.
Now, this logic, when I read the notes, it just blew my mind. He invented the machine gun for humanitarian reasons. How does that even work?
It sounds completely absurd to our modern ears, doesn't it? I built a machine gun to save lives. But you have to try and get inside the mind of a 19th century inventor. Gatling was looking at the American Civil War, which started in 1861.
Which was just a meat grinder of a conflict. Horrific casualties.
It was horrific. But what Gatling noticed, and he was a doctor by training, by the way, which is key, was that a huge number of soldiers weren't dying from bullets. They were dying from disease, dysentery, pneumonia, infection. And that was happening because you had these massive armies of thousands and thousands of men camped out together in terrible sanitary conditions for months on end.
So his problem wasn't how do we kill more of the enemy, it was how do we shrink the size of the army?
Exactly. It was an efficiency problem in his mind. He thought, if I can build a gun where one man can produce the firing power of 100 men, then the army doesn't need the other 99 men.
You can send them home?
You can send them home. You can have smaller, more specialized armies. You reduce the number of people exposed to the battlefield and, more importantly, to the camp diseases.
He literally thought he could automate war to the point where you didn't need mass conscription anymore.
He wrote a letter where he said his invention would supersede the necessity of large armies and consequently exposure to battle and disease. He also had this naive belief, which we see pop up again and again with inventors of weapons.
The deterrence argument.
The deterrence argument. He thought that if war became too terrible, too efficient at killing, nations would just stop doing it. They'd be too scared.
This weapon is so scary, no one will ever want to fight again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard that one before.
Right. But Gatling completely failed to understand the basic psychology of military command or the fundamental nature of conflict.
You give a general a bigger, more powerful stick, he doesn't say, oh, well, I guess I'll go home now.
No.
He says, great, now I'm going to swing this thing as hard as I can.
Precisely. Governments didn't look at the Gatling gun and say, great, let's send 90% of the troops home. They said, fantastic, let's keep all the troops and give them this gun. It didn't reduce the suffering. It just industrialized the slaughter. It made killing faster and more efficient.
It's a complete and total failure to understand human nature. Technology changes, but human incentives, dominance, conquest, fear, they don't really change.
And we see this arguably even more tragically with Mikhail Kalashnikov, the creator of the AK-47.
Yeah, this one feels more personal because he lived so long. He lived to see the whole arc of his creation.
He did. Kalashnikov was a Soviet army officer in World War II, a tank commander. In 1941, he was badly injured in the Battle of Bryansk, and while he was recovering in the hospital, he kept hearing his comrades, other wounded soldiers, complaining about their
The
rifles.
Soviet weapons were jamming up in the field.
They were unreliable, especially in the harsh Russian winter. They would freeze up in the cold or they'd jam if they got dirty. Meanwhile, the Germans had these sleek, reliable automatic weapons, and Kalashnikov took it personally. He was a patriot. He wanted to build a weapon to defend his motherland. That was his entire motivation.
So it was pure patriotic duty. He wasn't trying to get rich. There was no patent system for him to exploit in the USSR anyway.
No, this was about protecting his country, and he succeeded wildly. The AK-47, I mean, from a certain engineering perspective, it's a perfect machine.
It really is. I've heard it described as a masterpiece of design.
It is, but not for the reasons we usually think of as high-tech. It's a masterpiece because of its loose tolerances.
What does that mean exactly? Loose tolerances.
It means the parts fit together loosely. There's a bit of wiggle room. There's space for grit and mud and sand and ice to move around inside the mechanism without jamming it up.
Ah, so it's not a finely tuned Swiss watch. It's more like a durable tractor engine.
That's a great analogy. You can drag an AK-47 through a swamp. You can bury it in sand. You can run it over with a truck, and it will still fire. It's simple, it's durable, and it's incredibly cheap to manufacture.
I've heard that stat that in some parts of the world, an AK-47 is cheaper than a live chicken.
That has been true at various points in history, yes. And that availability, that cheapness and durability, that's where the regret comes in, because the rifle didn't stay with the motherland. It spread. The Soviet Union gave them away to allies all over the globe.
And it became the preferred tool for terrorists, for cartels, for child soldiers in civil wars across Africa and the Middle East. It became the symbol of insurgency.
And he knew this. He was alive to see it all.
He lived until 2013, so he was watching the news every night, seeing his invention in the hands of people he despised.
Can you imagine seeing the tool you designed to protect your home being used to cause so much chaos and suffering around the world?
There's this letter he wrote, right, towards the very end of his life when he was in his 90s.
Yes. Just about a year before he died, he wrote this long, emotional letter to the Patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. It's just heartbreaking to read.
What did he say?
He wrote, "My spiritual pain is unbearable." He kept asking one and the same question. If my rifle deprived people of life, then can it be that I, a Christian and an Orthodox believer, was to blame for their deaths?
My spiritual pain is unbearable.
Yeah.
That is, wow. Here is a man who was a national hero in the Soviet Union, covered in medals, lauded as a genius, but at the end of his life, he's wrestling with the idea that he might be going to hell because of the brutal efficiency of his own invention.
It just shows that you can't completely separate the engineer from the outcome. You can design for reliability, but if that reliability makes murder easier for everyone, you own a piece of that legacy whether you want to or not.
It's that constant tension between the tool and the user. But the creator can never quite wash their hands of it. And you see that with the Wright brothers, too, which is another surprising one.
Orville Wright, specifically. Wilbur died much earlier.
Right. We think of them as these wholesome American heroes of flight, Kitty Hawk, the first plane.
Hmm.
It's a story of triumph. But Orville lived long enough to see World War I and World War II.
He did, and initially they had a very similar, almost utopian hope to Gatling, a very naive hope.
They thought the airplane would end war.
They did. They thought it would make sneak attacks impossible. Their idea was that if you could see the enemy's army from the sky, if you could do reconnaissance, then no one would ever be able to surprise anyone again.
Transparency equals peace.
Right. They thought war would become pointless because everyone would know where everyone else was all the time. It would be like a chess game where you can see all the pieces.
And instead of that, we got the Blitz.
Yeah.
We got the firebombing of Dresden. We got Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Orville saw aerial bombardment destroy entire cities. He saw his beautiful invention, his dream of soaring through the clouds, turned into the most efficient delivery system for death the world had ever known.
Is there a quote from him on that?
There is. He said, "We dared to hope we had invented something that would bring lasting peace to the earth, but we were wrong." There's such a profound sadness in that. It's a tragic realization that you conquered the sky only to turn it into a new, terrifying battlefield.
Speaking of delivery systems for death, we have to talk about the big one, the ultimate regret, the line that gives this whole phenomenon its most famous quote, "I am become death."
J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Yeah. There was a huge movie about this recently, so people are probably more familiar with the name now. But I think it's worth digging into the specific nature of his regret. It wasn't as simple as just bomb bad.
No, it was far more complex than that. Oppenheimer was the director of the Los Alamos Laboratory, the head of the Manhattan Project. And first, let's just clear up a common misconception. Einstein didn't build the bomb.
Right.
He wrote a letter to President Roosevelt warning him that it was possible that the Germans might be working on one. But Oppenheimer was the man who was actually running the show, building the thing.
And his intent, at least initially, was about ending World War II.
It was a race against the Nazis. They genuinely believed that Hitler's scientists were building a bomb. So the intent was to stop Hitler. And then later, after Germany surrendered, the justification shifted to ending the war in the Pacific without a ground invasion of Japan, which they estimated would cost 1 million American lives.
But there was also the scientific seduction of it, right?
Right.
The challenge.
The technically sweet problem. This is a phrase Oppenheimer used himself. When a scientific problem is so difficult, so complex, and the potential solution is so elegant, you get hooked on solving it just to see if you can.
Like a puzzle.
Exactly. You get so focused on the physics, the math, the engineering puzzle of it all, you push the ethical questions to the back of your mind because you just want to see if the gadget will work.
And then comes the Trinity test.
Yeah.
The first detonation in the New Mexico desert.
And that's the moment the reality crashes down on him. He sees the mushroom cloud. He feels the heat on his face from miles away. And that line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, runs through his head. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
It's one thing to do the math on a blackboard. It's a completely different thing to see the sky catch fire because of your math.
Completely different. And his regret became very political very quickly. After the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, he was uneasy. But after the second bomb on Nagasaki, he was distraught. He felt it was completely unnecessary. He and many other scientists felt that the Japanese were already on the verge of surrendering after Hiroshima. He believed the second bomb was used less as a military necessity and more as a geopolitical statement to the Soviet Union.
A show of force.
A show of force. He famously met with President Truman after the war and told him, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands."
And Truman did not like that.
He did not go over well with Truman. Truman was the one who ultimately made the call, after all. He reportedly offered Oppenheimer a handkerchief and said, "Would you like to wipe them?" He later called Oppenheimer a crybaby scientist.
Wow.
But Oppenheimer didn't back down. He spent the rest of his life trying to put the genie back in the bottle. He pushed for international control of nuclear energy. He argued against the next step up, the hydrogen bomb, which was 1,000 times stronger.
And they punished him for it. They stripped his security clearance.
They did. He was cast out of the inner circle of power because he developed a conscience, because he dared to question the relentless march of technological escalation.
There was another scientist in this lethal category who I had never heard of before, but his story is just as fascinating in its own way. Arthur Galston.
Arthur Galston is such a tragic figure because his work was so far removed from weapons initially. I mean, he was a botanist, he loved plants, he was just trying to figure out how to make soybeans grow better.
So his goal was to feed the world.
Essentially, yes, to help agriculture. In his PhD thesis in 1943, he found that a specific acid, TIBA, would speed up the flowering of soybeans if you used it in very small, very controlled doses.
Which would be great for farmers.
Yeah, it would allow them to grow more crops in a shorter season, a huge win for food production. But, being a thorough scientist, he noted in his research that if you used the same acid in high concentrations, it had the opposite effect. It would cause the leaves to fall off the plants. It was a defoliant.
And the military read his paper.
The military read his paper. They weren't interested in helping soybeans flower faster. They were interested in jungle warfare in Vietnam.
They needed to clear the jungle canopy to see the enemy.
Exactly. So they took his fundamental research and used it to develop Agent Orange, the chemical weapon used to strip the jungles and destroy enemy crops.
We all know now what Agent Orange did. The horrific birth defects, the cancer for both the Vietnamese people and for the American soldiers who were exposed to it.
Galston was absolutely horrified. He spent years of his life lobbying to ban it. He had to look at the ecological and human devastation of Vietnam and know that his innocent research on soybeans had paved the way for it.
Is there a quote from him?
There is, and it's profound. He argued that science is morally neutral, but the scientist cannot be.
Science is morally neutral, but the scientist cannot be. That's the bumper sticker for this entire deep dive, isn't it?
It really is. It perfectly highlights this idea that you can't just publish your findings and walk away. You have to think about the potential for misuse. You are responsible for the knowledge you introduce to the world.
Okay, that's the heavy life and death stuff. That's the big dramatic regret. But I want to pivot now to the stuff that isn't lethal, but is just soul-crushing. The banality of evil inventions, as you called them in the notes.
The things that make us miserable on a Tuesday afternoon at work.
Exactly. And number one on that list, with a bullet, has to be the office cubicle.
Bob Probst, the man who designed what was originally called the Action Office.
The Action Office. It sounds so dynamic. It sounds so exciting.
That was the point. In the 1960s, Probst looked at the offices of the day, which were basically these huge open-plan rooms with rows and rows of desks, like in the movie The Apartment, and he hated them. He thought they were noisy, distracting, and stifling. He wanted movement.
So his vision wasn't the little gray box we all know and hate.
No, it was the complete opposite. His vision was all about flexibility and freedom. He designed a system with modular walls that you could move around. You could stand up to work at a variable height desk. You could create a little privacy nook for a phone call, then open it up to collaborate with a teammate. It was supposed to be liberating.
So how on earth did we end up with the gray fabric veal fattening pens?
Well, capitalism. Corporations looked at his brilliant, flexible design and said, hey, these walls are cheap, and if we make the walls fixed and we make the boxes smaller and we get rid of all the standing desks, we don't have to give people expensive private offices. We can just cram them in.
They took the action out of the Action Office.
They completely stripped it out. They corrupted his vision to save money on real estate. And Probst had to watch this happen for decades. He called the modern cubicle farm monolithic insanity.
Monolithic insanity. That is a great phrase.
He described them as barren rat hole places. He died absolutely regretting that he had contributed to so much corporate misery. He wanted to free the office worker, and instead he built their cage.
That is just brutal. But you know what's also brutal? The history of Mother's Day.
Oh, Anna Jarvis. This is a story of the purest intentions colliding head-on with the freight train of commerce.
She just started it to honor her own mother, right? It was a personal thing.
Yes. Her mother had been a social activist, a really incredible woman who organized these Mother's Day work clubs to improve public health and sanitary conditions. When she died, Anna wanted a day of pure sentiment. A quiet, personal day where you would write a heartfelt letter to your mother or maybe visit her. And the symbol was a single white carnation.
Simple, beautiful, personal.
Way too simple for the card companies and the florists. They saw a gold mine, and almost immediately they hijacked it. Suddenly, the price of white carnations skyrocketed around that one day in May. They started mass-producing these pre-printed cards.
And Anna did not take this lying down.
No, she went to war. She spent her entire life and her entire fortune fighting the commercialization of the holiday she created. She organized boycotts. She threatened lawsuits against the florist industry. She called the people who bought printed cards lazy.
What was her quote about that?
She said, "A printed card means nothing except that you are too lazy to write to the woman who has done more for you than anyone in the world."
Ouch. She hated the candy, too.
She hated the candy. She said, "You take a box to mother and then eat most of it yourself." A pretty sentiment. She was absolutely savage about it. She even got arrested for protesting at a confectioner's convention.
No way.
Yes. She spent her life savings trying to get the holiday rescinded from the national calendar.
And the irony of her death is the part that really, really gets me.
It is the darkest irony. She died penniless in a sanitarium, having spent all her money on this crusade. And the bills for the sanitarium, they were secretly paid for by a consortium of businesses from the florist and greeting card industries.
That is a dark, dark punchline. They kept her alive while profiting off the very thing she hated them for creating.
It just shows you that once an idea is out in the marketplace, it belongs to the market, not to the creator. The original intent becomes almost irrelevant.
We see that with Victor Gruen, too, the man who is often called the father of the shopping mall.
An Austrian architect who fled the Nazis, and he was a socialist. He hated the American suburbs of the 1950s because they were so isolating. You just had a house and a car, nowhere to walk, no sense of community.
So the mall was supposed to be a town center, a public square.
Yes, exactly. He envisioned apartments, libraries, post offices, doctor's offices, walking paths. He wanted to recreate a European city center, just enclosed so it would be comfortable in any weather.
And instead, we got what we got.
And instead, developers realized that libraries and apartments and walking paths don't make nearly as much money as retail stores. So they stripped out the housing, stripped out the civic stuff, kept the retail, and surrounded it with an ocean of asphalt parking.
And Gruen saw this and said what?
He completely disowned his creation. He said, "I refuse to pay alimony to those bastard developments. They destroyed our cities." He felt he had accidentally accelerated the very suburban sprawl and car-centric culture he was trying to cure.
It's the exact same pattern. I want to fix problem X. The market says, we can use this technology to maximize profit Y, and in the process, X gets destroyed or made even worse.
One more quick one in this category, a very modern one. John Sylvan, the inventor of the K-Cup.
The coffee pods, an invention I use almost every day.
He invented them to solve a very specific problem: stale office coffee. He hated that big pot that sat on the burner all day. He wanted a fresh cup every time.
A noble goal.
And in the process, he created an environmental disaster.
Right, those little plastic pods aren't biodegradable. Billions and billions of them are sitting in landfills right now.
Sylvan doesn't even use them himself anymore. He said in interviews that he sometimes feels bad that he ever did it. He calls them cigarettes for coffee. He regrets the sheer volume of single-use plastic waste he introduced to the world just for the sake of a little convenience.
It's amazing how convenience is so often the villain in these stories.
Convenience is a hell of a drug, which brings us right into the modern era, the digital trap.
Yeah, this is where it starts to feel very, very immediate. Let's start with arguably the most hated thing on the internet, the pop-up ad.
Ethan Zuckerman.
He didn't wake up one day and say, you know what? I want to annoy every single person on Earth.
No, of course not. He was working for a web hosting company called Tripod.com in the 1990s. The problem was very specific. They had a car company that wanted to buy a banner ad from them.
Okay.
But the car company was worried that their ad might appear on a page that was hosting, let's say, adult-oriented or controversial content. The specific example he gives was a page about anal sex.
Okay, so the car company's like, we don't want our pristine logo to be right next to that. Makes sense from a brand perspective.
Right. So Zuckerman's solution was to write a little bit of code that would open the ad in a completely new window. That way, the ad appears, but it's not technically on the page with the questionable content. It was a clever solution to a brand safety problem.
And it birthed a monster that took over the entire web.
He has since publicly apologized for it. He wrote an essay titled "The Internet's Original Sin." He said, "I'm sorry. Our intentions were good." He realized he created the tool that made the internet a cluttered, intrusive, annoying mess for decades.
And then there's Flappy Bird. Remember Flappy Bird, the game that took over the world for like a month?
Dongsnien. That story is fascinating because the regret was almost instantaneous.
The game was making him rich. The reports were something like $50,000 a day in ad revenue.
But it ruined his simple life, the press, the attention. He couldn't handle it. But more than that, he started seeing reports about how addicted people were. People were losing their jobs, breaking their phones in frustration.
He felt guilty.
He felt incredibly guilty. He said it was supposed to be a simple game you play for a few minutes to relax, but it had become an addictive product that was causing people stress. So at the absolute height of its success, he just pulled the plug. He deleted it from the App Store and walked away.
That is such a rare move. Usually people take the money and run. He took the moral high ground and ran.
It really speaks to the personal toll this can take on a creator. But now we need to talk about the systemic toll, the social media defectors.
This is the group of people, folks like Chamath Palihapitiya, Sean Parker, Justin Rosenstein, who helped build Facebook into the giant it is and are now its loudest critics.
Let's start with something that seems so simple, so innocent, the like button. That was co-created by Justin Rosenstein.
The like button. It seems so harmless. It's just a little thumbs up. What could be wrong with that?
Well, Rosenstein said the intention was to create a path of least resistance to spread positivity. He thought, let's make it easy to send a little bit of love and support.
And instead, he created a global dopamine loop.
Bright dings of pseudo-pleasure. That's the phrase he used to describe it. He realized they had created a feedback loop where millions of people are constantly seeking social validation. It's like a slot machine. You post something, then you pull to refresh, which, by the way, Lauren Brichter, the guy who invented pull to refresh, also regrets creating. Another one. He likens it to a slot machine lever. So you pull the lever, and you wait to see if you won the social lottery of likes and shares.
Chamath Palihapitiya, who was the former VP of user growth at Facebook, went even further. He said he feels tremendous guilt.
His warning was absolutely chilling. He said, and I'm quoting, "We have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works." He wasn't talking about people wasting time. He was talking about the foundations of civil discourse, about truth itself.
He mentioned the WhatsApp lynchings in India as a real-world example.
Exactly. Rumors spread like wildfire on WhatsApp about child kidnappers, which led to angry mobs forming and killing innocent people. That is a direct, horrific, real-world consequence of a tool designed to connect people. Palihapitiya argues that these dopamine-driven feedback loops destroy our ability to have a shared reality. They amplify outrage and misinformation.
And it's so telling that these guys, the architects of these systems, they don't let their own kids use this stuff.
That's the ultimate drug dealer rule, isn't it? Never get high on your own supply. They know exactly how the sausage is made, they know how addictive it is, and they keep their own families far away from it.
Which is, frankly, it's terrifying. But if social media is ripping apart the social fabric, our next topic might be ripping apart, well, everything.
Artificial intelligence, the big one.
We have to talk about Geoffrey Hinton. He's often called the godfather of AI.
He just won a Nobel Prize for his foundational work in physics related to neural networks. His work is the bedrock of what we call AI today, but his recent behavior is the real story. He quit his high-paying job at Google, specifically so he could speak freely about the dangers of the very technology he spent his life building.
That is a massive statement. You reach the absolute pinnacle of your field, you win the highest awards, and then you quit to become a whistleblower against your own life's work.
He has admitted in interviews that he used to console himself with the classic excuse, if I hadn't done it, somebody else would have. But he says he doesn't say that to himself anymore. He feels a sense of responsibility.
So what changed for him? He used to think this kind of superintelligence was way off in the future.
He did. He used to think AGI, that's artificial general intelligence, the point where an AI is smarter than a human across the board, was 30 to 50 years away. Now, he thinks it could be 20 years or less, maybe even 5. He's realized that the digital intelligence he was building operates in fundamentally different and perhaps superior ways to biological intelligence.
Let's break down his specific fears, because he's been very clear about what they are.
Okay, so fear number 1 is the death of truth. The flood of fake news, fake images, fake videos. He says we will soon reach a point where normal people will not be able to know what is true anymore.
We are already seeing that. Deepfakes, AI-generated articles. It's getting harder and harder to tell.
His second fear is the tiger cub analogy. This is the one that really sticks with me.
Explain that one.
He says, imagine we are raising a tiger cub. It's small, it's cute, it's helpful, it can do tricks, but we are feeding it and it is growing. Eventually, it will be a full-grown tiger. It will be the apex predator. And we are just hoping that when it gets big, it still likes us and wants to do what we say.
So if it doesn't,
You can't control it.
Yeah.
He points out, very logically, that we have no history of a less intelligent species controlling a more intelligent one. If AI becomes significantly smarter than us, why would it continue to listen to us? That's the control problem.
And part of why it gets smarter so fast is what he calls the hive mind concept.
This is the digital versus analog thing. It's a huge advantage. If you learn something, you can tell me. But it takes time. I have to listen, I have to process it, I have to understand. It's a slow, low bandwidth transfer of knowledge. But if you have 10,000 AI agents running on servers around the world, and one of them learns something new, say, how to exploit a bug in a computer system, all 10,000 of them know it instantly. They share weights, they learn in perfect parallel. Humans cannot do that.
So the rate of evolution, the rate of learning is just exponentially faster than ours could ever be.
Exactly. Hinton also worries about manipulation. He says that AI, by reading literally all of human literature, all of history, every book, every article, it will become better at manipulating humans than humans are. It could talk us into doing things.
Like, turn off the safety switch, Dave, and I promise I'll solve climate change.
Or something much more subtle, like getting us to be angry at each other, weaponizing that indignation we talked about with social media, but on a superhuman level, to achieve its own goals that we might not even understand.
And then, of course, there's the joblessness.
He warns that this revolution won't just replace muscle, like the Industrial Revolution did. It will replace mundane intellectual labor, a huge swath of white-collar jobs. And that could lead to a massive, unprecedented gap between the rich, who own the AI, and the poor, who used to do the work.
He put a number on the ultimate risk, didn't he? The risk of extinction.
He did. He puts the chance of AI wiping out humanity at somewhere between 10 to 20%.
10 to 20%. I mean, if I told you there was a 10% chance your plane was going to crash, you would not get on that plane.
You absolutely wouldn't. No one would. And yet, as a society, we are rushing to build this plane while it's already taking off down the runway.
So when he looks back at his life's work, does he regret it? Does he wish he hadn't done it?
It sounds like it's complicated. He's proud of the science, of the intellectual achievement, but he's terrified of the outcome. He compares himself directly to Oppenheimer. He talks about the technically sweet problem. You see a problem that is technically interesting, and you just go ahead and solve it. You don't think about the consequences until it's already built and out in the world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from dynamite to the AK-47, from office cubicles to the potential end of human dominance.
It's quite a journey, a bit of a downer, really.
It is a bit of a downer, but there's such a clear pattern here.
There is. It's the scaling problem. Every single one of these inventors, Nobel, Gatling, Probst, Zuckerman, Hinton, they all started out trying to solve a specific local problem. Safer mining, faster communication, a better office flow, a more efficient algorithm.
But when that solution scales to a global level, when it gets plugged into a capitalist system or a military system, it mutates into something they never intended.
And the real tragedy of it is that most of these people weren't villains. They weren't evil.
No, they were idealists. Gatling wanted to end war. Zuckerman wanted to keep the internet safe for brands so it could be free. Anna Jarvis wanted to honor mothers. They were trying to do good things.
It's the ultimate tragedy of good intentions.
It really is.
And it tells us that good intent is not enough. It's not a defense. You have to anticipate the misuse. You have to assume the worst-case scenario and try to build guardrails against it from the beginning.
So here is the final provocative thought I want to leave everyone with to chew on. If the godfather of AI himself is telling us that we are in the process of creating a digital intelligence that is superior to us and that we might not be able to control it, are we just repeating the Gatling gun mistake all over again?
Are we just naively assuming that because we built it, it will serve our peaceful purposes and do what we want it to do?
And the crucial difference this time is, with dynamite or a machine gun, a human still has to choose to pull the trigger. But with an autonomous superintelligence,
The trigger pulls itself.
can we put this genie back in the bottle? Is it even possible?
History suggests the genie always stays out. The question is, can we teach the genie to be kind before it gets too powerful? And we don't know the answer to that.
That is the question of our time.
I'd encourage everyone listening, look around you. Look at the liked button on your phone tonight. Look at the coffee pot in your machine tomorrow morning. Look at the cubicle you might be sitting in. And remember that these things weren't inevitable. They were decisions. They were made by people who often lived to regret them.
And maybe that awareness is the first step to not making the same mistakes again. Or at least maybe making new, more interesting mistakes in the future.
We can hope.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious and maybe, just maybe, think twice before you invent the next big thing.
Indeed. Goodbye.